A text message. Just 19 words. But these 19 words destroyed an entire family. And you won't believe the revenge that followed. This is the story of Marilyn, 67 years old, who discovered in the worst possible way that her own family saw her as nothing more than a human ATM. And when she decided to close that ATM, well, what happened was devastating. Before we begin, if you enjoy real stories that touch our deepest emotions, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss what's coming. It was a Tuesday night, 11:02 p.m. Marilyn was in her kitchen, carefully wrapping small souvenirs for her grandchildren. Keychains that said, "Aloha" and "Grandma loves you." She smiled, imagining their little faces lighting up when they received the gifts on the first night of the dream trip she had been planning for 3 years. 3 years saving every penny. 3 years dreaming of one last family memory. 3 years believing that love is shown through sacrifice. But then her phone buzzed. Marilyn slid her glasses down to the tip of her nose and read the message that would change everything forever. "You won't be joining us. My wife prefers to keep it only her family. You've already done your part by paying." Just 19 words, sent by Nathan, her own son, the same boy who once drew her as a superhero for a school project with a flowing cape and the caption, "My mom saves the day." Marilyn stared at the screen as if the words belonged to someone else's life. She waited for another message, some kind of correction, some reassurance that this was a misunderstanding. Instead, a second text arrived. "Don't take it the wrong way, Mom. It's just simpler this way." Simpler. As if she were an equation to be removed, a complication erased for convenience. But here's what Nathan didn't know, what none of them knew. The devastating decision his mother was about to make would leave them stranded at the airport, humiliated, and bankrupt. And it all started with one simple click. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To understand the magnitude of what Marilyn did, you need to know how deep this betrayal really went. Let me paint you a picture of the woman Nathan had just discarded like yesterday's newspaper. Marilyn had been a widow for 5 years. Her husband James died of cancer, and she spent their final months caring for him 24 hours a day. No complaints, no self-pity, just love in its purest form. After James passed, Nathan promised his mother she would never be alone. "We're family," he would say. "Family sticks together." But families, as Marilyn would learn, sometimes have conditions. Enter Tanya, Nathan's wife. Beautiful, manipulative, and with the emotional intelligence of a shark sensing blood in the water. The signs had been there for years, though Marilyn told herself otherwise. Tanya would make tiny corrections in front of the children, roll her eyes when Marilyn shared stories from the past, and decide to host Christmas at her mother's house without so much as a discussion. But the most telling thing wasn't Tanya's words, it was her gaze. She didn't look at Marilyn, not through her, but past her, as if Marilyn had already left the room, as if she was furniture Tanya had grown tired of. Still, Marilyn believed Nathan would never let that distance stand. This was the boy who brought her tulips every spring, even after he moved away. He wrote Mother's Day cards that made her sob into her hands. But people change, and sometimes they change into something unrecognizable. The Hawaii trip wasn't just a vacation. It was Marilyn's last desperate attempt to bring the family together, to create one perfect memory before age made such gatherings impossible. She had been planning it for 3 years, every detail, every expense, every moment of joy she imagined they would share. Let me tell you about the sacrifices she made, because when you hear this, Nathan's betrayal will hit you like a punch to the gut. For 3 years, Marilyn lived like a monk. She skipped her weekly tea with friends to save $12. She wore double socks in winter instead of turning up the heat. She took on tutoring sessions despite her aching joints, working with difficult children for $15 an hour. She had a mason jar hidden behind a vase in her cupboard, which she secretly called her dream jar. A few dollars here and there, scraps of hope tucked away like pressed flowers. Every grocery shopping trip became a strategic mission. Generic brands only. Coupons clipped with the precision of a surgeon. Meat only when it was marked down for quick sale. She canceled her cable subscription and watched free movies on her laptop. She dyed her own hair instead of going to the salon. She wore shoes with worn soles rather than buy new ones. But the biggest sacrifice? She stopped buying herself Christmas and birthday gifts entirely. Every penny that might have gone to her own small pleasures went instead into that dream jar. Over time, the jar became a savings account, and the account grew to $21,763.84. Every cent earned through sacrifice. Every dollar a piece of her comfort traded for their happiness. The villa she chose overlooked the Pacific Ocean. 8 bedrooms, a private pool, and a wraparound deck perfect for watching sunsets. She had researched it for months, reading every review, studying every photo. She booked first-class flights for everyone, even Tanya's parents, who had never spoken a kind word to her. Even Tanya's sister and her boyfriend, people she barely knew. She arranged rental cars, restaurant reservations, and excursions, snorkeling trips for the adults, a dolphin encounter for the children, and a traditional luau that cost $400 per person. Everything planned around Tanya's mother's bad knee. Every breakfast chosen to please picky little eaters. Every activity selected to create Instagram-worthy moments. Marilyn even bought matching Hawaiian shirts for everyone. She imagined them posing together on the beach, a picture-perfect family in paradise. But there was one more thing. Something that would make Nathan's betrayal even more heartbreaking. Marilyn had planned a private ceremony for the family on their first evening. On the beach at sunset, she wanted them to light a candle together in memory of James. She had brought his favorite scented candle, lavender, and written a short speech about how grateful James would be to see his family together in such a beautiful place. She had practiced the speech in her mirror, tears streaming down her face as she imagined Nathan's children learning about the grandfather they barely remembered. All of this, the money, the planning, the dreams, the ceremony, all of it was for them. All of it was love made tangible. And Nathan's response? You won't be joining us. But here's where the story takes a dark turn that will make your blood boil. Marilyn opened her laptop and checked the guest list one more time. The confirmation email from the travel agency was crystal clear. 8 names. Nathan, Tanya, their 2 children, Tanya's parents, her sister, and her sister's boyfriend. 8 names, not 9, not 10. 8. This wasn't an oversight. This wasn't a last-minute decision. They had planned this exclusion from the very beginning. Marilyn wasn't forgotten. She was deliberately erased. Think about this for a moment. While she was sacrificing everything to make their dream vacation possible, they were actively plotting to enjoy that vacation without her. Every time Nathan called to check on the planning, he already knew she wouldn't be there. Every time Tanya made suggestions for family activities, she was planning activities that wouldn't include the woman paying for them. They didn't want a grandmother on their trip. They didn't want James's widow, slowing them down with her memories and her grief. They wanted her money, just her money. And you know what the most twisted part is? They probably told themselves they were being kind. Poor Marilyn, they might have said. She's getting old. Travel is so hard for her. She'll be more comfortable at home. Meanwhile, they were living it up in paradise on her dime. But Marilyn wasn't poor, she wasn't helpless, and she certainly wasn't stupid. She was about to prove that sometimes the quietest people make the loudest statements. The banking app glowed on her phone screen. 1 button, 1 simple toggle switch. The difference between account active and account frozen. Her finger hovered over that button for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. If she pressed it, the villa booking would fail. The flights would be canceled. The rental cars would disappear. 8 people would arrive at LAX tomorrow morning expecting a first-class trip to paradise, only to discover that paradise had been revoked. But Marilyn wasn't cruel. Not yet. She decided to give Nathan one final chance. She typed a message. "Let me know if you'd like any help with the kids' bags or snacks before the trip. I can bring extra motion sickness bands for Olivia." A simple message, a grandmother's offer to help. A final olive branch extended with shaking hands. She sent it and watched the screen. The message was marked as read almost immediately. Then, nothing. "No, thanks, Mom. No, we've got it covered, but we appreciate it." No acknowledgement of her existence at all. Silence. Cold, deliberate silence. That silence told Marilyn everything she needed to know. This wasn't miscommunication. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated indifference. They didn't want her help. They didn't want her presence. They didn't want her at all. They just wanted her to keep paying and stay invisible. But banks, as Marilyn was about to demonstrate, can close without warning. She opened the banking app again. Her finger found the toggle switch. "Are you sure you want to freeze this account?" the app asked. Yes, she was sure. "All linked cards will be disabled immediately." Yes, she understood. "All pending transactions will be canceled." Yes. She was ready. She pressed confirm. For the first time in weeks, Marilyn's chest expanded with a full breath. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't spite. This was clarity. This was the sound of chains breaking that she hadn't even realized she was wearing. The confirmation appeared on her screen, and with it, a strange sense of peace. She wasn't the family ATM anymore. She was just Marilyn again. But the real drama hadn't even started yet. It was now 10:30 p.m. in Los Angeles. Nathan's family would be waking up in 6 hours, final preparations for their paradise vacation. They would shower, pack their carry-on bags, and drive to LAX filled with excitement. They had no idea that their vacation had just evaporated. They had no idea that in 8 hours they would be standing at the airport check-in counter watching their perfect trip collapse in real time. They had no idea that the quiet woman they had dismissed was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. Departure day arrived like any other Tuesday morning. Somewhere across town, Nathan was probably making coffee. Tanya was probably picking out her airport outfit, and the kids were probably bouncing with excitement about seeing the ocean. At exactly 8:15 a.m., they would arrive at LAX. Nathan would swagger up to the first-class check-in counter with 8 boarding passes printed from home, confident that everything was paid for and confirmed. But Marilyn knew better. She sat in her kitchen, sipping coffee from a chipped mug Nathan had brought her on Mother's Day when he was 9. That same mug, now decades older, trembled slightly in her hand as she waited. The first text arrived at 8:27 a.m. "Hey Mom, getting weird. Error at check-in. Can you check the travel account?" Marilyn read the message and set her phone face down on the table. 5 minutes later, "They're saying the card was declined multiple times. You see anything on your end?" Marilyn took another sip of coffee and watched a bird land on the feeder James had built 20 years earlier. Then the calls started. One every 10 minutes, then one every 5, then back to back, as Nathan's panic escalated. Marilyn placed the phone face down again. Of Heisey. Screen glowed and dimmed like a restless ghost. She could imagine the scene at the airport. Tanya's perfect makeup beginning to smudge as stress set in. The children asking why they weren't boarding the plane. Other passengers staring as their family drama played out in public. Nathan's voice getting higher with each conversation with airline staff. "There must be some mistake. My mother booked this. She has money. Call her. Someone call her." But Marilyn wasn't answering. The voicemails started arriving one after another. "Mom, please call me. We can't get the rental car confirmed. The credit card keeps getting declined. Please, the kids are starting to panic." "Mom, it's me again. The airline is saying all our tickets were canceled. This has to be some kind of error. Can you call the travel agency?" "Mom, where are you? Tanya's crying. The kids are asking what's happening. We need you to fix this, please." Each voicemail was more desperate than the last. Each message revealed another layer of the disaster unfolding in real time. By 10 a.m., the calls stopped. Marilyn imagined them driving home in silence, 8 disappointed people crammed into 2 cars, their paradise vacation reduced to the most humiliating day of their lives. But this was only the beginning. Over the next 2 days, the notifications rolled in like gentle waves. First, the resort refunded the villa, $8,000 back into Marilyn's account. Then the rental car agency, $1,200. The excursions, $2,000. The luau tickets, $3,200. One by one, every transaction reversed. Every dream they had built on her sacrifice came tumbling down. By Thursday evening, Marilyn's account balance was full again, $21,763.84. The same number she had watched slowly drain over 3 years of sacrifice now returned to her like a tide coming back to shore. But this time, the money wasn't for them. This time, it was hers, and she was going to spend it very differently. Marilyn opened a fresh notebook and wrote at the top of the first page, "The Forgotten Women." She began making a list. Carol, whose son hadn't spoken to her since her cancer diagnosis. Beverly, who had never seen the ocean despite living her entire life only an hour from the coast. Louise, who buried her husband and still carried his photo to church every Sunday. Frances, who raised her grandchildren but wasn't invited to their graduations. Each name belonged to a woman who, like Marilyn, had been sidelined, overlooked, dismissed. Each had carried heavy burdens without applause. Each had given everything and received little in return. Marilyn picked up her phone and started dialing. "Carol, it's Marilyn. How would you like to go to Hawaii?" The response was immediate disbelief, then nervous laughter, then tears. "Hawaii? With you? But why? I can't afford—" "Because you matter," Marilyn interrupted. "Because someone should tell you that you matter." 6 phone calls, 6 women who had been forgotten by their families, 6 women who thought their adventures were over. "Pack your bags, ladies. We're going to paradise." But Nathan wasn't done. Oh no. Nathan had one more humiliation coming. 3 days after their ruined trip, an email appeared in Marilyn's inbox. The subject line read, "Just want to clear the air." She opened it slowly, already knowing what she would find. "Hi, Mom. We're back now. Things didn't go as planned, obviously. Look, maybe some of that was our fault. Tanya says hi. She was just stressed. You know how she gets with travel. Maybe we weren't completely fair about the whole family thing. Anyway, we're in a bind financially now. Had to rebook everything on credit cards, and the interest is killing us. Could you maybe consider returning part of the original deposit? We're still family after all. The kids keep asking when they're going to see Grandma again. Tanya feels terrible about the misunderstanding. Let me know what you think. We could really use the help. Love, Nathan." Marilyn read the email twice. Then she closed her laptop without responding. Love, Nathan. After everything, he still signed it, Love, Nathan. As if love was something you could claim after betrayal. As if love was a word that could erase deliberate cruelty. As if love meant anything when it came with conditions and price tags. There was no real apology in that email. No acknowledgement of what they had done. No recognition of the 3 years of sacrifice they had dismissed with 19 words. Just excuses and a request for money. Marilyn walked to her closet and pulled out a suitcase. She had packing to do. The plane to Hawaii was everything the original trip was supposed to be, but better. 6 women in first class, laughing like teenagers, sharing stories that mattered. Carol wore a bright scarf in her hair and kept taking pictures of her wine glass against the airplane. Window. Beverly pressed her face to the glass during takeoff, watching California disappear beneath the clouds. Louise clutched James's photo and whispered that he would have loved seeing his wife finally free. When they arrived at the villa, the same villa Nathan's family was supposed to enjoy, the women stood on the deck overlooking the Pacific Ocean in stunned silence. "I never thought I'd see something this beautiful," Beverly whispered. "I never thought I mattered enough to be here," Carol added. That first night, Marilyn placed James's photo at the center of the dining table. No one asked her to move it aside. No one looked past it with impatience or boredom. Instead, each woman shared a story about someone they had lost. Husbands, parents, dreams, all the ghosts that follow us into paradise. They lit the lavender candle Marilyn had brought for the original ceremony. But this time, the ceremony was for them. For the women who had been erased from their own families. Photographs. "We are not invisible," Marilyn said as the candle flickered in the ocean breeze. "We are not burdens. We are not walking wallets. We matter." For 5 days, they lived like queens. They snorkeled in crystal blue water. They attended the luau and learned to hula. They watched sunsets from the deck and sunrise from the beach. They laughed until their stomachs ached and cried until their hearts felt lighter. On their last morning, they stood together on the beach as the sun painted, the sky in shades of gold and pink. The waves curled around their ankles, and the salt air filled their lungs with something that felt like resurrection. "Thank you," Beverly said to Marilyn. "Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you for reminding me I'm worth seeing," Marilyn replied. When they returned home, the women stayed in touch. They met for coffee every Tuesday. They celebrated each other's birthdays. They became the family they had all been searching for. As for Nathan and Tanya, they struggled for months to pay off the credit card debt from their attempted vacation. Their marriage grew strained under financial pressure. Tanya's parents never quite forgave the humiliation of being turned away at the airport. Nathan sent a few more emails over the following months, each one a little more desperate, each one ignored. Finally, he showed up at Marilyn's door on a Saturday morning. He looked older, tired, defeated. "Mom, can we talk?" Marilyn looked at her son, really looked at him, for the first time in years. She saw a man who had forgotten that love isn't a transaction, a man who had traded his integrity for his wife's approval, a man who had lost his mother and didn't even know it. "There's nothing to talk about, Nathan. But we're family." "Family," Marilyn said quietly, "doesn't exclude each other from paradise and then ask for refunds." She closed the door. 6 months later, Marilyn received a wedding invitation. Carol was marrying a widower she had met at their Tuesday coffee group. The ceremony would be small, the invitation said, but meaningful. "Will you be my maid of honor?" Carol asked when she called. "I thought my daughter hasn't spoken to me in 2 years. But you? You saw me when I was invisible. You gave me back my life." At the wedding, Marilyn stood beside her friend as she promised to love again. In the front row sat Beverly, Louise, Frances, and the other forgotten women, their faces glowing with joy. Later, at the Ijura reception, as they danced to music from their youth, Beverly leaned close to Marilyn's ear. "Do you ever regret it? Closing the account?" Marilyn looked around at the women who had become her true family. Women who had been discarded and dismissed, now celebrating love and second chances. "Never," she said, "not for a single second. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them they matter. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is refusing to be taken for granted." Nathan lost more than a vacation that day. He lost a mother who would have moved mountains for him. He lost a woman who measured love in sacrifice and showed it through service. He lost someone irreplaceable, and he lost her through his own choices. But Marilyn? Marilyn found something better than the family she had lost. She found herself. She found her worth. She found women who valued her for who she was, not what she could provide. She found that sometimes, closing a door is the only way to open a window. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well without the people who never deserved you in the first place. The last time anyone heard from Nathan was a Facebook message he sent to one of Marilyn's Tuesday coffee friends. He was asking if she knew how to reach his mother. He wanted to apologize, he said. He wanted to make things right. The friend never responded. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. But wait, there's more to this story that will absolutely shock you. Remember Tanya, the manipulative daughter-in-law who orchestrated Marilyn's exclusion? Her story doesn't end with just financial strain and marital problems. 6 months after the Hawaii disaster, Tanya made a discovery that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She was cleaning out Nathan's old bedroom at his childhood home. The house was being sold since Marilyn had moved to a beachside condo with her inheritance from James, when she found a shoebox hidden in the closet. Inside were dozens of letters. Letters Marilyn had written to Nathan over the years, but never sent. Letters she had written during her loneliest nights as a widow. Letters pouring out her heart about how much she missed James, how much she treasured Nathan's children, how grateful she was to still have family. But here's the part that will make your skin crawl. Also in that box were printed emails. Emails between Nathan and Tanya from 2 years earlier, planning how to gradually distance themselves from Marilyn while still keeping her financial support. "We need to be strategic about this," Tanya had written. "Keep her involved enough that she keeps paying for things, but not so involved that she becomes a burden on our social life." Nathan's response was even worse. "Maybe we can frame it like we're protecting her. Tell her travel is too strenuous for someone her age, but still let her pay for our trips as her way of contributing." They had been plotting Marilyn's exclusion for years. Every family dinner where they made her feel unwelcome. Every holiday celebration they moved to Tanya's family's house. Every time they forgot to invite her to the children's school events. It was all calculated, all deliberate, all designed to slowly erase her from their lives while keeping her bank account accessible. But the most devastating email was one Tanya sent just a week before the Hawaii trip. "I can't stand the way she looks at the kids, like she's trying to replace their other grandmother, and the way she talks about James constantly. It's depressing. This trip will be so much better without her energy dragging us down." Nathan's reply: "Agreed. Let's make this the last big thing she pays for. After Hawaii, we'll need to find a way to cut ties completely." Cut ties completely with his own mother, the woman who raised him, supported him, loved him unconditionally. When Tanya read those emails she herself had written, something cracked inside her. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the realization of what they had done to an innocent woman. Or maybe it was just the stark reality of seeing their cruelty in black and white. She tried to show Nathan the box. "Look what we did," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Look what I made us do." But Nathan refused to read them. "That's the past, Tanya. Mom made her choice when she canceled the trip." "She didn't make a choice, Nathan. We forced her hand. We pushed her, until she had no choice but to push back." That was the beginning of the end for Nathan and Tanya's marriage. But while Nathan's family was falling apart, Marilyn's new life was just beginning to flourish in ways that would surprise everyone who knew her. Remember Beverly, the woman who had never seen the ocean? She didn't just see it in Hawaii, she fell in love with it. When they returned home, Beverly made a decision that shocked her adult children who had been treating her like an invalid for years. She sold her house and moved to a small coastal town in Oregon. She got a part-time job at a local art gallery and learned to paint seascapes. Her Instagram account, started at age 71, now has over 50,000 followers who love her daily sunrise photos and inspirational captions about starting over. Beverly's transformation inspired Louise, who used her portion of her husband's life insurance, money she had been hoarding for emergencies, to go back to school. At Capesiao, 68, Louise earned her real estate license and now specializes in helping other widows find new homes that fit their new lives. Carol, who married the widower from their coffee group, started a support group for women whose adult children had cut them off. The group meets twice a week and has grown from 6 women to over 40. They call themselves the Phoenix Circle, women who rose from the ashes of family rejection. Frances, who raised her grandchildren but wasn't invited to their graduations, started a blog about grandparents' rights that went viral. She now advocates for legislation protecting grandparents from parental alienation and has testified before 3 state legislatures. And what about Marilyn? Marilyn became something no one expected. She became an entrepreneur. Using the skills she had developed managing her household finances so carefully for decades, Marilyn started a financial consulting business specifically for older women. Women who had been excluded from family financial decisions. Women whose adult children assumed they were incapable of managing money. Women who had been treated like burdens instead of assets. Her business, Second Chapter Financial, operates out of her beachside condo and serves clients across the country via video calls. Her specialty, helping women reclaim their financial independence from manipulative family members. Her first client was a 74-year-old woman whose son had been helping her manage her money by gradually transferring it into his own accounts. Marilyn helped her freeze those transfers, recover over $40,000, and establish new accounts that only she controlled. Her second client was a widow whose daughter-in-law had convinced her to pay for a family reunion that she was then disinvited from at the last minute. Sound familiar? Word spread quickly through networks of older women who had been financially abused by their own families. Marilyn's client list grew to include women from all walks of life who had one thing in common: they had been taken advantage of by people who were supposed to love them. But here's the twist that will blow your mind. One day, 18 months after the Hawaii incident, Marilyn received an unexpected phone call at her office. "Is this Marilyn Peterson?" "Yes, this is she." "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm calling about my mother-in-law. She's been financially supporting my family for years, and my husband and we've been taking advantage of her. I found some things that made me realize how wrong we've been, and I need your help to make it right." The voice was shaking, filled with genuine remorse. This wasn't Nathan calling with another half-hearted apology. This was a daughter-in-law who had genuinely recognized the damage she had caused and wanted to repair it. Marilyn agreed to take the case, and over several months, she helped Jennifer and her husband restructure their relationship with his mother. They repaid money they had borrowed and never returned. They included her in family events. They acknowledged her contributions and treated her with the respect she deserved. The transformation was so successful that Jennifer asked Marilyn to speak to a group of young mothers about recognizing and preventing elder financial abuse within families. That speaking engagement led to others. Soon Marilyn was traveling across the country, sharing her story and helping families recognize the signs of financial manipulation before it destroyed relationships permanently. Her message was always the same. Love is not a transaction. Family is not a bank, and dignity is not negotiable. But the most powerful moment in Marilyn's new career came 2 years after Hawaii. She was speaking at a conference in Chicago about family financial abuse when she noticed a familiar face in the audience. It was Tanya, sitting in the back row, tears streaming down her face. After the presentation, Tanya approached the stage, hesitantly. "Mrs. Peterson, I don't know if you remember me." "I remember you, Tanya. I came here because..." Because I needed to hear this. I needed to understand what we did to you, what I did to you. Marilyn looked at her former daughter-in-law, really looked at her, for the first time in years. Tanya had aged considerably. Her hair was graying, her face was lined with stress, and her eyes held a sadness that hadn't been there before. I found the letters, Tanya continued. The ones you wrote to Nathan, but never sent. And I found our emails, the ones where we planned to exclude you while keeping your money. I read them all, and I can't live with what we did. Where is Nathan? Marilyn asked quietly. He won't listen. He says you chose to cut us off, and he won't take responsibility for his part in it. Our marriage ended 6 months ago. He said I was being dramatic, that you were manipulating me even from a distance. Tanya reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. This is every penny we spent from your Hawaii fund. I've been working 2 jobs to pay it back. I know it doesn't fix what we did, but I needed you to know that someone in that family recognized how wrong we were. Marilyn took the envelope, but didn't open it. What do you want from me, Tanya? Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I see you now. I see what we took from you, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is the moment that defines character, isn't it? After everything Tanya had done, after all the manipulation and cruelty, she stood before Marilyn, offering genuine accountability. What would you have done in Marilyn's position? Would you have accepted the apology? Would you have turned away? Would you have forgiven the woman who orchestrated your family's rejection? Marilyn looked at Tanya for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised them both. There's a coffee shop across the street, Marilyn said. Would you like to talk? They spent 3 hours in that coffee shop. Tanya explained how she had felt threatened by Marilyn's relationship with the children, how she had convinced herself that Marilyn was trying to replace her own mother in their affections. She talked about her own insecurities, her fear that she wasn't a good enough mother or wife, and how she had channeled those fears into resentment toward a woman who had never done anything but love her family. I was so focused on what I thought you were taking from me that I couldn't see what you were giving, Tanya said. You weren't trying to replace anyone. You were just trying to love us. Marilyn listened without judgment, without anger, without the bitterness that Tanya probably deserved. When Tanya finished, Marilyn asked one question. What about the children? Do they ask about me? Tanya's face crumpled. Every week, Olivia still has the keychain you made for Hawaii. She carries it everywhere. She asks why Grandma Marilyn doesn't come to visit anymore. I don't know what to tell her. Tell her the truth, Marilyn said simply. Tell her that adults sometimes make mistakes that hurt people they love, and tell her that loving someone means treating them with kindness, not just taking from them. Before they parted that day, Marilyn gave Tanya her business card. If you ever encounter another family going through what we went through, send them to me. Help me prevent other women from experiencing what I experienced. Tanya nodded, tears still falling. Would you ever consider seeing the children again? Marilyn paused. That's not up to me anymore, Tanya. That's up to Nathan. And so far, Nathan has made his choice clear. But fate had one more surprise in store for this family. 3 months after that coffee shop conversation, Marilyn received an unexpected visitor at her beach condo. It was Olivia, now 12 years old, standing on her doorstep with a social worker beside her. Grandma Marilyn? Olivia's voice was small, uncertain. It turned out that Nathan's life had continued its downward spiral after his divorce from Tanya. He had developed a drinking problem, lost his job, and was now unable to care for his children properly. Tanya was working 2 jobs to support herself and couldn't take on full custody. The children needed a guardian, and Olivia had asked the social worker if she could live with her Grandma Marilyn, the grandmother who used to send care packages and remember every birthday, the grandmother who had disappeared from their lives without explanation. The irony was breathtaking. The woman Nathan had discarded as a burden was now being asked to save his children from the consequences of his choices. What happened next will restore your faith in the power of unconditional love. Marilyn didn't hesitate. She opened her door, opened her arms, and opened her heart to the grandchildren she thought she had lost forever. Olivia and her younger brother Marcus moved in with Marilyn that week. For the first time in years, the beach condo was filled with the sounds of children. Homework discussions at the kitchen table, cartoon shows on weekend mornings, bedtime stories read by lamplight. Marilyn hired tutors to help them catch up academically. She enrolled them in activities they had always wanted to try but couldn't afford. She gave them the stability and unconditional love that had been missing from their lives since their parents' dysfunction consumed their household. But she also gave them something more valuable. She taught them about dignity, about respect, about the difference between loving someone and using someone. "Your father is sick right now," she would tell them when they asked about Nathan. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love. That doesn't mean they don't love you. It means they forgot how to show love in healthy ways." The children thrived under Marilyn's care. Olivia's grades improved dramatically. Marcus, who had been acting out at school, became calmer and more focused. They both started talking about their futures with excitement instead of anxiety. And here's the most beautiful part of this story. The other women from Hawaii, Beverly, Carol, Louise, Frances, became honorary grandmothers to Olivia and Marcus. The children suddenly had a whole network of women who celebrated their achievements, attended their school events, and showered them with the kind of attention that comes from people who choose to love you, not people who feel obligated to. Beverly taught Olivia how to paint seascapes. Carol helped Marcus with his math homework. Louise took them house hunting when Marilyn decided to buy a bigger place to accommodate her new family. Frances shared stories about their grandfather James, keeping his memory alive in ways Nathan never had. The children learned what healthy family relationships looked like. They learned that love is shown through presence, not presence. They learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up, who stays, and who treats you with respect even when it's inconvenient. But what about Nathan? What happened to the son who traded his mother for his wife's approval? Nathan's rock bottom came 6 months after his children moved in with Marilyn. He was arrested for driving under the influence and spent 3 days in jail. When he was released, he had nowhere to go. His apartment had been evicted for non-payment of rent. His friends had tired of his excuses and self-pity. His ex-wife was building a new life and wanted nothing to do with his problems. He ended up sleeping in his car in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, staring at his phone, scrolling through old photos of happier times, photos of his children laughing, photos of family dinners where his mother smiled proudly at her grandchildren, photos of the life he had thrown away for the approval of a woman who eventually left him anyway. In his darkest moment, Nathan did something he hadn't done in years. He got on his knees and prayed. Not for money, not for his problems to disappear, but for the strength to become the man his mother had raised him to be. The man he had been before fear and insecurity turned him into someone unrecognizable. The next morning, Nathan checked himself into a rehabilitation program. For 90 days, he worked on his addiction, his anger, his self-destructive patterns. He wrote letters to his mother that he didn't send. He wrote letters to his children, apologizing for the chaos he had brought into their lives. He wrote letters to Tanya, acknowledging his part in the destruction of their marriage. Most importantly, he wrote letters to himself, the child who had drawn his mother as a superhero, the young man who had brought her tulips every spring, the son who had once been proud to call her his hero. When Nathan completed the program, he had a choice to make. He could continue wallowing in self-pity and blame everyone else for his problems, or he could take responsibility for his actions and try to repair the damage he had caused. He chose repair. Nathan's first stop wasn't his mother's house. It wasn't even his children's school. It was the cemetery where his father was buried. He stood at James's grave for 2 hours, talking to the man who had shown him what it meant to be a good husband and father. He apologized for disappointing him. He promised to do better. Then he drove to his mother's beach condo. Marilyn was in her garden when she saw Nathan's car pull into the driveway. She had been expecting this moment for months, ever since the children had moved in with her. She knew that eventually Nathan would have to face what he had lost. He walked slowly up the path, his head down, his shoulders carrying the weight of his mistakes. When he reached the front step, he looked up at his mother for the first time in over 2 years. "Mom?" Marilyn looked at her son, really looked at him. She saw the boy who used to bring her dandelions and call them flowers. She saw the teenager who had cried in her arms when his first girlfriend broke his heart. She saw the young man who had asked for her blessing before proposing to Tanya. But she also saw the damage. The lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and poor choices. The tremor in his hands that betrayed his struggle with alcohol. The hollow look of someone who had lost everything that mattered. "You look thin," she said finally. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. After everything he had done, after all the pain he had caused, his mother's first words to him were about his well-being. "Can we talk?" he asked. Marilyn glanced toward the house, where her grandchildren were doing homework at the kitchen table, the same table where she had once wrapped their Hawaii souvenirs with such hope and love. "The children don't know you're here," she said. "They're doing well, Nathan. They're healing. I won't let anyone disrupt that healing, not even you. I know. I'm not here to take them away from you. I'm here to apologize, to take responsibility, to try to earn the right to be their father again someday." What happened next was the most honest conversation Nathan and Marilyn had ever had. They sat on her porch overlooking the ocean, and Nathan told her everything. About his drinking, about his financial problems, about the way he had blamed everyone else for his failures, about how he had convinced himself that excluding her from Hawaii was somehow protective rather than cruel. "I told myself we were sparing you the stress of travel," he said. "But the truth is, I was embarrassed by you. Tanya made me feel like having an older mother-in-law was somehow a reflection on us. She made me feel like you were a burden instead of a blessing." Marilyn listened without interruption, the way she had always listened to her son's problems when he was young. "I read the letters," Nathan continued. "The ones you wrote, but never sent. I know how lonely you were after Dad died. I know how much you missed him, how much you needed family, and instead of being there for you, I pushed you away." "Why?" Marilyn asked quietly. "Why wasn't I worth fighting for?" Nathan was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was a coward. Because fighting for you would have meant standing up to Tanya, and I was more afraid of losing her approval than losing your love. I took your love for granted because I thought it would always be there no matter how badly I treated you. And now I've lost everything. Tanya, the kids, you, my job, my self-respect, everything. And I finally understand that the person I hurt the most was the person who loved me the most." Marilyn looked out at the ocean, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. The same ocean she had dreamed of sharing with her family, the same paradise she had eventually shared with women who valued her presence. "What do you want from me, Nathan?" "Nothing," he said, and for the first time in years, he meant it. "I don't want anything from you anymore, Mom. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did. I see what we took from you. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." They sat in silence for a while, two people who had loved each other imperfectly, who had hurt each other deeply, who were trying to find a path forward through the wreckage of their relationship. Finally, Marilyn spoke. "The children ask about you sometimes?" Nathan's breath caught. "What do you tell them?" "I tell them that you're sick, but that you're working on getting better. I tell them that loving someone sometimes means giving them space to heal." Are they happy here?" Marilyn smiled for the first time since Nathan had arrived. "They're thriving. Olivia made honor roll. Marcus joined the soccer team. They have friends, they have stability, they have people who show up for them consistently." "Thank you," Nathan whispered. "Thank you for giving them what I couldn't." Before Nathan left that day, Marilyn gave him something unexpected. It was a photo album she had been making for the children, pictures of their life with her over the past 6 months. Pictures of them at the beach, in the garden, with Beverly and Carol and the other women who had become their chosen family. "They should know their story," she said. "All of it. The good and the bad. Someday, when you're ready, you can be part of their story again. But you have to earn that place back. Not with money or gifts or promises, but with consistency and respect and putting their needs before your wants." Nathan held the album against his chest like it was made of gold. "How do I do that? How do I earn back what I threw away?" "One day at a time," Marilyn said. "One choice at a time. One act of love at a time. The same way I'm learning to trust you again. Slowly, carefully, with room for you to prove who you want to be." Nathan drove away that day with something he hadn't had in years. Hope. Not hope that everything would go back to the way it was. That was impossible. But hope that maybe, with enough work and enough time and enough genuine change, he could become worthy of his mother's love again. It's been 3 years since that conversation. Nathan has remained sober. He found a job and a small apartment. He pays child support consistently and attends every school event and soccer game, sitting in the back, never pressuring the children to acknowledge him, but always there to show his support. Slowly, carefully, Olivia and Marcus have begun to rebuild a relationship with their father. Not the relationship they had before. That trust was broken too completely to repair. But a new relationship, built on Nathan's consistent actions rather than his promises. Marilyn watches this rebuilding process with cautious optimism. She has learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and that second chances must be earned through sustained change rather than granted through guilt or obligation. The story of Marilyn and Nathan isn't a fairy tale with a perfect ending. It's something more valuable. It's a real-life example of what's possible when people choose accountability over blame, growth over comfort, and genuine love over conditional acceptance. Some words, once spoken, can never be taken back. Some people, once lost, are lost forever. But some relationships, even after being broken beyond recognition, can be rebuilt into something stronger and more honest than they ever were before. Marilyn learned that her worth wasn't determined by other people's treatment of her. She learned that family is something you build, not something you're automatically granted. She learned that the greatest gift you can give someone is showing them they matter, and the greatest gift you can give yourself is refusing to accept less than you deserve. Nathan learned that love is not ownership, that family is not a financial arrangement, and that the people who love you unconditionally are rare treasures that should be protected, not taken for granted. And Olivia and Marcus learned that families can be chosen, that love comes in many forms, and that sometimes the people who seem the most ordinary are actually superheroes in disguise. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories that remind us what really matters. Share it with someone who needs to. Remember that they are not invisible. They are not a burden, and they matter more than they know. Because in a world that often treats people as disposable, we all need reminders that every person has value, every relationship requires effort, and every act of genuine love makes the world a little bit brighter. Remember, you are not what you can provide for others. You are not your bank account or your services or your sacrifices. You are a whole person worthy of love, respect, and inclusion. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are, more than you know.